Welcome back to Grief Inspired. My name is Catherine McNulty, and in today's video, I am going to share with you the staged approach that I've created to help you move through your grief and find healing. If you've lost someone close to you, you know how devastating grief can be. And if you're like I was, understanding what to do and how to move through grief is a struggle. You certainly don't learn about it in school. The people around you don't really seem to know how to help, and you haven't figured out how to do it. So I am here to help because grief is a process and I want to help. I've put together a 4-stage process to help you move forward in grief. It's what we do in my 12-week grief course. I want to share the basics of what I do so that you can understand exactly what happens in our course and how it can potentially help you heal too. So I mentioned that there were 4 stages. The 4 stages are to understand your grief, explore your identity, take back control, and then start to get back to living. Let's break those 4 stages down. The first stage is understanding your grief. If you've experienced a loss, you might not understand grief. This might be the first time that you've actually had to encounter grief. Or maybe you've had to deal with grief before and it didn't go so well. So how we understand our grief is like this. We start by accepting the reality of the loss. We spend time processing all of the emotions that we start feeling. And you may be feeling emotions that you've never felt before. You may be experiencing multiple emotions at the same time. I want to ensure you that that is normal. We also spend time on the concept of hope. Early in our grief, when we're devastated by loss, the thought of ever being happy again can be distant. And if we don't believe and have hope that we can get through the process, it's not a good place to be. So one of the first things that we do in understanding our grief is getting to that hope, finding the hope that you need, and then giving you education on the grief process so that you can get through it. And then we move into the second stage of healing, and that is exploring your identity. When we lose the people that we love, so much about our lives change. And that's what a lot of times can make it much more difficult. But with that change, you as a person tend to change. The things that once brought you joy now are triggers. The people that you expected to show up for you, maybe they're not around. The things that you want and the things that become really important, the things that have meaning, they start to shift as a result of your loss. So when I say exploring your identity, what we do is talk about how you adjust to the new life that you have without your loved one in it. We do it in a shared environment where you can share your story, you can hear other people's stories. And as you hear those stories, and you listen to yourself share your story, we begin to unpack and understand the needs that you are going to have moving forward so that you can begin helping yourself through grief. And once we've explored your identity, then we start to go to stage 3, and that is taking back control. And this is the empowering stage, because we focus on the things that you can control. If you've been grieving for a while, you know that there is so much about grief and the grief process that leaves us feeling out of control. This is our opportunity to take back control of the things that we can control. We learn how to do things like develop a self-care plan that's suited to you so that on your hardest days, you know how not only to get through them, but to overcome them and keep on living. And as you go through this process, you begin to build a resiliency that's going to empower you to build a life that you have now. It's not the life that you wanted, but it is the one you have. And you deserve to live fully. You deserve to be happy. After all, that's what your loved one would want, for you to be happy. And stage 4 of healing, I call getting back to living. This is where big shifts start to happen and you build a life that might be unrecognizable to yourself. But since you've already understood your grief, you've explored your identity, who you are, what's important to you, and you've taken back control for your life, this last stage is the time to build a life full of meaning and purpose, the life that is inspired by everything that you've gone through. You might have noticed that the name of this channel is Grief Inspired. And I call it that because I personally have been inspired by my own grief. My grief has inspired me to want to help you. It's inspired me to make over 400 videos here on YouTube. It's inspired me to create my grief journal to help you along the way. And it's inspired me to build these courses and continue to refine and make them better to help you heal. Well, I want that for you too. I want your grief to inspire you to decide what's next, to help you find your purpose. We all have to decide in the early stages of grief whether or not we want to keep on living. And if you're here, it's because you do. And why not get back to living and live fully? You can do it for yourself. You can do it for your loved one. You are worth it. So don't you want to start becoming grief inspired? Do you want to be inspired by your grief to find purpose and have meaning and have support along the way? Can you do some of these things alone? Maybe. But why would you want to? Grief is an isolating experience to begin with. Coming together with other people who are also grieving in a positive and uplifting community with me as your coach is going to help you get to where you want to go. We're going to adjust to the reality of the loss that you have. We're going to explore who you are. We're going to teach you how to take back control and allow you to get back to living. Now, what are you waiting for? You can do this. Let me help you because grief is a process and I help.